Hi, Southminster. It's good to see you and to be with you again this week. I don't know about you, but I've been hearing a lot recently about states and businesses and especially churches beginning to reopen. It's as though we're slowly, it's as though there's this thought process out there that we're slowly overtaking COVID-19, and soon it'll be somewhere in our rearview mirror. And yet there's no cure. And each day there are more cases. And each day we hear about more warnings about the dangers of reopening too soon. You know, when the quarantine started, my wife and I had this saying. And it's a little morbid, but it gets the point across. No dead grandmas. The saying came from our concern for our own parents who are older, and the fact that COVID-19 is more dangerous to older people than it is, at least it seems to be anyway, to younger people. So our agreement was that they would stay home and that we would stay home until this whole thing was over. Because we didn't want any dead grandmas. We didn't want to expose them unnecessarily. I mean, the fact was, even though we may not show any symptoms, we could still have the virus and we could give it to them. And we didn't want to do that. We didn't want anything to happen, especially knowing what could happen if they got sick. So no dead grandmas. The point is, really, we wanted them to be safe. And I feel the exact same way about all of you. I want you to be safe. Last week I read a couple of articles that were shared with me about how even singing can be dangerous, can spread the virus, because when we sing, we obviously spray molecules. We spray aerosol from our mouths, which contain molecules from the virus that others can catch. So I tell you this because even though other churches are reopening, we will not reopen until it's safe to do so. And even then, we're going to be reopening, I should say, in stages to ensure everyone's safety. So with that in mind, you're going to be receiving a letter soon that will be outlining how we're planning on setting up our phases to reopen. And that will include worship. And I also want to say this, when we do finally decide to reopen, and we are worshiping together again in person in our sanctuary, we are going to have a celebration unlike any other that you can count on. Well, in the meantime, we're still navigating this quarantine. And for the last several weeks, we've been working through God and human suffering. A heavy series, there's no doubt. The reason I decided to do this series, though, was not because I felt you needed more weight on your plates right now. Trust me, no one needs more weight on their plates right now. I did choose this series intentionally, and I chose it for a couple of reasons. One, many are struggling and suffering right now, and they're looking for answers. They're looking for hope as well. The second reason is that you may have seen some of these articles, and there are a lot of them, saying that approximately 2/3 of U.S. believers see COVID-19 as a message from God to change. Now, one of the ways I think the church will need to change is how we talk about and enter into the suffering of others. Whether we realize it or not, many will be looking for comfort, asking questions about purpose, and wanting a reason to be optimistic following the pandemic. I think the church is in a very unique position to address these needs, in large part because of our faith in an ever-present God, as well as God's call on our lives as the church to be ever-present for others. And that includes, most especially, in our suffering together. Whether it be for others in our own congregation or others in our communities. So that means paying attention to the struggles, the questions, the doubts, and the sufferings in our own lives and in the lives of others. It also means being ready to engage them when this long, dark night is over and the morning finally comes. Our devotion this week once again comes from one of my favorite theologians, Jürgen Moltmann. And this is a reflection that he wrote as part of one of his books called Watchmen, What of the Night? And it goes like this. Darkness, night, these are always symbols for the God-forsakenness of the world as well, and for the lostness of men and women. In the darkness we see nothing, and we no longer know where we are. There is an apt passage in the book of Isaiah. In exile and far from home, strangers among strangers, the Israelite prisoners come to the prophet and ask, Watchman, what of the night? How long will the night last? The watchman answers, the morning is coming, but it is still night. I will inquire, come back again. But Paul, Christ's witness, proclaims the night is far gone. The day is at hand. Let us then cast off the works of darkness and put on the armor of light. So, it is time to get up from sleep, to forget the dreams and the night terrors, and to experience life in the light of God's new day, which is now dawning. In our dreams, each of us is alone. But when we wake up, we are in a world we share with others. For as Heraclitus already said, the waking have one world in common. Sleepers, meanwhile, turn aside, each into a darkness of their own. Get up, says Christ to the benumbed disciples, and let us be going. So let us also go with eager attentiveness out into every new day. We are expected. We are expected. I love those words from Moltmann, actually from Jesus. Waking up, forgetting the dreams and night terrors, and experiencing God's abundant life, though, is easier said than done. We all know that. It requires the companionship and compassion of those who are awake. It requires the reassurance that says, it's okay. The night is over. The day eagerly awaits us with optimism. Come with me. Again, I think the church is in a unique place to provide this kind of companionship and compassion. As the Apostle Paul once said, may the God of hope fill you with all joy and peace in believing, so that by the power of the Holy Spirit you may abound in hope. In no other religion nor faith is God so closely identified with our hope for the future. God is not only within us and around us, but alongside us. God is also out ahead of us. It's like the Israelites making their way to the Red Sea and eventually the Promised Land. God goes ahead of us like a pillar of cloud by day and a pillar of fire by night. In the words of Moltmann, God comes to meet men and women out of His future and reveals to them new, open horizons, which entice them to set forth into the unknown and invite them to the beginning of the new. Because God meets and leads us this way, the church has been empowered through the Holy Spirit to do the same for others. We have been empowered to invite others to the beginning of the new. You see, that's why we're doing this series, God and Human Suffering, so that we can enter into and invite others to the beginning of the new. Now, this Sunday will be the final week of our series, and we will be exploring what it means for the church to be a place of suffering and of hope. Folks, the morning is coming. And as Jesus said, let's get up, get going, because we are expected. Thanks, Southminster. Have a great week. We'll see you soon.